whoever is giving me the feedback from the back of the room, thank you. Excellent. First off, good afternoon. My name is Eric Garr. I'm the General Manager of the National Broadband Plan at the FCC, and I want to make a couple of announcements and then get started on our afternoon together. First off, we're thrilled to be here in Chicago. This is actually my hometown. It's great to be back. But I'd like to ask for a couple of items. The first one is if we could all turn our cell phones on stun. That would be really great, just so that we can have a good discussion here. So if we could all just kind of do that. I know that oftentimes we need to be reached, but if we can keep them on the quiet mode, that would be great. And then second of all, we're going to be pressed for time today, so we'll move quickly through the program. We look forward to hearing from the different presenters, and we look forward to your questions. I believe question cards have gone around to everyone in the audience, so feel free to use those as we go through the agenda. I will very quickly introduce the chairman of the FCC, Julius Genachowski, who has been a great leader and proponent of broadband in his few months at the FCC at the helm. It has been a great pleasure to work with him on these important issues that we'll hear from more today. So without further ado, Chairman Genachowski, welcome to Chicago.
Thank you very much. Eric, thank you. Let me first tell you how pleased I am that we're having this important hearing on broadband and small businesses in Chicago. We have just an incredible set of panels that I know we'll be getting some questions from the audience, so I want to get to the panelists as quickly as possible. Just a few things by way of introduction. First, a thank you to Eric Garr and our broadband team for organizing this process, for organizing what over 50 workshops and hearings at this point in Washington and also all over the country. Roger Goldblatt is here, who works on all these hearings, does incredible work. I know Ronnie Cho and Shamik Dutta are here, and other members of the FCC team. It takes a lot of work to do. I want to acknowledge Colin Kroll, my senior counselor, who's here, very, very engaged in these important issues. Tom Reed, let me introduce Tom Reed, who is next to me, a son of Chicago, and very happily made the leap into public service a few months ago to head up the FCC's Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And it's the part of the FCC that really focuses on making sure that there are real opportunities for small businesses and other parts of the population who have the hardest time getting access to opportunities in the communications area. Tom will have some questions as we go through the panel today, and I encourage all of you to develop a relationship with Tom and OCBO at the FCC as well as the broadband team. Let me quickly try to introduce the FCC and broadband and the topic of small businesses. Some of you may be aware that the FCC has been tasked with developing a national broadband strategy. And you may also know that in the Recovery Act that gave the FCC that responsibility, about $7 billion in near-term broadband grants were authorized that are being distributed by the Commerce Department and the Agriculture Department. Why all this interest in broadband? What is broadband? I still find that when I talk to some people who use the word broadband, we all assume everyone knows what it means. Broadband is high-speed internet service. You could get it through wires. You can get it wirelessly. Broadband is our information grid. Broadband is what happens when you plug in your computer and you search on the internet. When you go to a smartphone and you get on the internet, more and more are using broadband, or when you put an air card into your laptop. Now, why is all of this so important? It's important because broadband is key to our country's success, key to opportunity in the 21st century in three different ways. One is broadband is essential as a platform for economic growth, job creation, small business expansion, and startups. Obviously, at these times, understanding where and how we can have an endurable, sustainable engine for job creation it's obvious how critical that is. Broadband is a key part of the answer to that question. I'll come back to small businesses in a minute, but let me say second, broadband is an essential platform for driving success in tackling a whole series of national goals, from education to healthcare to a clean energy future to public safety. Our information grid in various ways will play an essential role in delivering on the opportunity. And we may hear from some of the panelists on how that so is, pertains to small businesses. And third, broadband will be our platform for civic engagement and improved government services in the 21st century. We are trying very hard at the FCC to start using 21st century communications technologies like broadband to get more and better and more frequent input from the public. Today's hearing, for example, is available on the internet. We're taking questions not only from people who are in the room, but for people who are online and want to ask questions. All of our workshops have been open to the public, both physically and online. We're taking comments to our proceeding online and figuring out a way to make that work with the Administrative Procedures Act. Now, small businesses, the topic of today's hearing, one of the most important topics that we have as part of broadband, and I think there's a very strong argument that it's the most important topic. Small businesses are the engine of job creation in the United States, and they have been for a long time. The statistics are really amazing. Small businesses inject about $1 trillion a year into our economy. Small businesses have created, on a net basis, over 93% of all new jobs over the past 15 years. Home-based entrepreneurs employ over 13 million people. It's hard to imagine a more important topic than to think about how we can make sure that small businesses continue to play this essential role as an engine of job creation. Well, in the 21st century, we can let small businesses use 20th century tools, or we can work on a strategy to make sure that our small businesses are using 21st century tools and have access to our 21st century information grid. Small businesses need broadband. They need to be on the 21st century information grid to compete and create jobs in the 21st century. Let me try, and I'm going to ask our panelists to expand on this as we go through the afternoon, to talk about some of the information we've gotten on why that's so. First, broadband, ubiquitous internet access enables small businesses to reach new customers, new audiences. If you're a small business on the street here in Chicago, or you can reach customers who can walk to or park at your store, or with broadband you can reach customers who are at home, whether they're 5 miles away, 500 miles away, 5,000 miles away. And there are many examples, we'll hear some today, of offline businesses using the internet in creative ways to expand their markets, expand their revenues, and of course there are lots of examples of new businesses that are starting online only. So one, broadband can enable small businesses to expand their markets, and two, broadband can help small businesses lower their costs. And I know we'll hear about this on the panel, but giving small businesses meaningful access to all of the services that are available in the cloud is a way for small businesses to reduce their costs. It reduces startup costs as well, increase revenues, better profits, a recipe for job creation in the United States, and therefore a very, very important topic that we're tackling today. As we move to our panelists, I'll tell you what I'll be interested in today, and having spoken with my colleagues on the commission, I think we all share the same questions. We'd like to hear from our panelists on how significant the small business broadband opportunity is, what you think the costs are of inaction, what you think the main barriers are to getting more small businesses online. The data that I've seen suggests that about half of small businesses either aren't online or have unsatisfactory broadband connections. And fourth, what specifically do you think that the FCC can do as part of its national broadband plan that would accelerate the adoption by small businesses of broadband for all the reasons that I've spoken about. So with that, I think, Eric, why don't you lay out just how this will work, and then we'd like to jump into our panelists.
Great. So what we'll do is two panels. First panel is conveniently seated to my left. And we'll ask everyone to give a few minutes of testimony on small business and broadband. And then we'll have questions from the chairman as well as questions from the public and have a little bit of discussion. We'll then take a short halftime break, switch to the second panel, and go through the same exercise. I'm going to ask that we start on the far end of the panel with Norma Reyes. And as we go through each person, I'd ask you to quickly introduce yourself and then get into your comments. And if everyone could stick to around 5 minutes, that would be really great. As mentioned, I'll be the time cop, and will do my best to keep us moving as quickly as we can. So, with that.
And Eric, if I could just interrupt before you start. We want to hear from Tom Reed, and we will at the beginning of the second panel because we want to get straight to our panelists, but I want to make sure Tom has a chance to talk about OCBO at the FCC as well.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I am Norma Reyes. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection for the City of Chicago. And on behalf of Mayor Daley and the City of Chicago, I want to begin by thanking you, Eric Garr, the Commission, and the members of your team for its work to develop a national broadband plan, and in particular to thank you for choosing Chicago to hold this very important field hearing on small businesses and broadband policy. I especially thank you for including small businesses in the public discussion of the National Broadband Plan, because when discussing the digital divide, small businesses are often overlooked. The Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection is charged with ensuring a fair and vibrant marketplace in Chicago for both businesses and consumers. Currently, we issue approximately 100,000 business licenses a year. While Chicago and the region are home to about 30 Fortune 500 companies, small businesses make up 90% of all businesses in the city, so they are a critical part of our economy. And again, you said it, the success of small businesses is fundamental to the economic recovery and future development of Chicago and this country. Again, you said 93% of the new jobs in the past 15 years have been created by the corner mom and pop stores, restaurants, beauty shops, dry cleaners, and tech startups, small businesses. Nationally and locally, small businesses are at the heart of our economy. And especially in these challenging economic times, the mayor believes that more than ever, we need to do everything we can to speed up, there's no pun intended there, but to speed up our economic recovery, to grow our economy and get people back to work. Broadband is a key driver for small business success. In Chicago, we like to use the term digital excellence. Broadband gives local businesses access to new distant markets. Broadband can increase business efficiencies through technologies like telecommuting and video conferencing. Broadband access to e-government can decrease the burdens of government regulation. In 2007, the mayor commissioned an advisory council, and they found that small businesses, just like individuals, need effective network access that is high-speed, reliable, affordable, available everywhere, affordable hardware, suitable software, digital education, evolving mindsets, the value learning, connecting and communicating through technology, and that recognize business and other opportunities. Small businesses in cities face the same barriers as broadband in other urban and rural areas. A lot of people think, because we're in Chicago, we have broadband everywhere. Well, let me tell you a couple facts. The common assumption, again, is that metropolitans like Chicago with skyscrapers, that we have broadband everywhere. Chicago is 234 square feet miles, and each square mile is different. Many residential neighborhoods, some suburb-like, even industrial areas, large forest preserves. Chicago is a city of neighborhoods, and only a small fraction of Chicago is the downtown riverfront, where the connection is strong. I'll give you just an example. Just 5 years ago, I got DSL in my home. Just 5 years ago, I was able to get DSL in my home. I have aldermen calling me today asking me, when is DSL going to come to our neighborhood? And this is Chicago. Small businesses operating throughout Chicago neighborhoods have barriers to broadband uses. Some small businesses may face access barriers. For example, they have only residential grade access, lack of high speed, commercial grade access. Other small businesses may be located in the industrial quarters that have no broadband access at all. Other small businesses may face access barriers in the form of affordability. Throughout the city's Digital Excellence Initiative, Chicago is trying to address these barriers in concrete ways, and I know Matt is going to talk about that. My time is coming short, but you're not going to stop me until I'm done. Chicago has made many recommendations obtaining digital excellence centered around those 5 key drivers that I talked about. I guess because my time is getting short, one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that this year Chicago did the very first Chicago Tech Expo for small businesses, connecting small businesses to technology, the right time. And the theme was positioning your business for the future. Let me share with you some numbers. The Chicago Tech Expo had about 1,100 businesses or young entrepreneurs coming in. They categorized, 52% of the attendees categorized themselves as business owners. Future entrepreneurs, about 20%. Non-for-profits, 14%. Students, 4%. Over half, 51% of the attendees are interested in finding new technology solutions. 47% wanted marketing strategies. 44% wanted to establish or improve their web presence. The most common reason given for participating in the Tech Expo was to gain knowledge, grow, and expand their business. And I can go on, but I won't. But just in closing, I just want to add that I think you should be commended about your commitment to transparency. This is very important. The end users are consumers. Businesses are consumers, and they need protection as well. And so localities are the best place. They're the first responders in terms of protecting consumers and protecting our business consumers. And that's something, and when you're putting together this national plan, please, please keep that in mind, that the first responders, the people that businesses go to first, are the localities. And with that, I thank you.
That was really great. Thank you. And let's move on to Marianne Markowitz from the SBA.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Chairman Janikowski, for hosting this FCC hearing and inviting the SBA to participate. I'm the Regional Administrator for the SBA in Chicago. The SBA's mission is to help small businesses start and grow. Our administrator likes for us to emphasize that we help 2 different kinds of businesses. We help the small Main Street business, and these are the businesses that form the fabric of our community and our life, like the hairdresser, the restaurant, that sort of business. And we've served these businesses very well since our founding in 1953, and we continue to serve them well. We also, at the same time, work very hard to support the quick-growing, the fast-growing, innovative small businesses, and these are the gazelles, the businesses that form the foundation of America's long-term competitiveness. Broadband is at the intersection of both of these types of companies. It is an emerging industry in which some of the small, innovative businesses work, the ones that produce and sell broadband-related products and services. But it also strengthens the foundation for all 30 million small businesses in America. So all businesses that are connected or businesses that can connect can use broadband as a tool to help them increase their efficiency, increase their profits, grow and create jobs. There are 2 important areas where the SBA can be impactful. The SBA provides access to capital and counseling and assistance services. First, capital. As you may know, small businesses rely much more heavily on bank-provided financing. At the SBA, we have a $90 billion portfolio of bank guarantees and bank loans. And we use this in coordination with our 5,000 finance partners. These are banks, credit unions, and other finance partners to help small businesses get access to capital. As we all know, the credit markets froze last year. At the SBA, we used the Recovery Act to help make some changes and get the money flowing again. We used the Recovery Act to change our top two lending programs, the 504 and the 7A. We reduced or eliminated the fees on both of those programs, and then we also increased the federal guarantee up to 90% on the 7A program. These two changes worked. This formula worked. And as a result, we saw our loan program, the volumes go up 80% as compared with the weeks before the Recovery Act. Recently, in the last few months, we're seeing the loan volumes that we saw in 2007 and 2008. But here's the real headline. At the SBA, we used $375 million in stimulus funds for this purpose, and we leveraged it into $16 billion in lending. That's $16 billion that we got into the hands of people, small business owners that knew exactly what to do with this money and get it to work in our economy. In fact, the SBA approved over 300 Recovery Act loans for over a total of $100 million in loans to green tech companies. These are companies that put solar panels on roofs, install wind turbines, and provided energy efficiency and environmental services. We have the capacity to help companies in the broadband industry. And it's because we want to help with the growing demand for broadband, and that's just one of the many reasons we're working with Congress on two things. First, as I mentioned, our formula worked. The reduced fees and the increased guarantees helped get the money flowing, but we ran out of stimulus funds in the week leading up to Thanksgiving. This was months before anyone expected this program to expire. So we're asking Congress, with the President's support, to extend this program through the end of 2010. Additionally, we're asking Congress to raise the limits on our loans from $2 million to $5 million. We know from our lending partners and small businesses and from our own hard data that the demand for these larger loans exists. So we see no reason that the SBA shouldn't meet this demand, especially for emerging industries, companies in emerging industries like broadband. The second major area that we help is counseling. And I want to touch on this quickly, although, oh my goodness, I have 1 minute left. Our counseling network is really large. The administrator refers to it as the bone structure of the agency. The backbone is our staff, but at 2,000, our staff is very small compared to other federal agencies, and we have a very large mission. So we rely on our resource partners, and through our resource partners, we have 14,000 affiliated counselors. And these counselors can help small businesses increase their efficiency, grow, and create jobs. So the best thing about this service is that it's free. The SPDCs are a particularly great resource partner to help companies in the broadband sector, but all of our resource partners can help small businesses understand how to manage their business in a better way using broadband. I'll give a couple quick examples of ways that businesses can strengthen their management with broadband. They can move more time-consuming payroll, banking, and financing processes into inexpensive web-based products. Many essential procedures can be done online in a quicker fashion, like applying for patents, licenses, and loan applications. Small business managers, employees can be more mobile once they're connected. And small businesses, this is the most important thing that Chairman Janikowski mentioned earlier, small businesses can expand their reach beyond the local market. This is particularly important for businesses in rural areas, but it's also important for businesses in areas where the demographics are shifting because of the changing economy and maybe the local market is shrinking. So I think I'll move forward. I'm running out of time. Broadband is also particularly important for companies that want to export, and the President is strongly encouraging small businesses to export more. Our government provides assistance in this area through the SBA, Ex-Im Bank, Commerce, and other agencies. Broadband connectivity is an essential step towards exporting. And a few quick remarks about exporting. 95% of the world's customers live outside of our borders. We currently only export 10% of our GDP, which is far too low for a country as developed as ours. And at the end of the day, more exporting means more jobs, and we need more jobs in this country. The SBA stands behind Illinois small businesses with our lending and counseling assistance programs. We want to help you grow, succeed, and create more jobs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. Matt Guilford.
Thank you very much, Eric. I would like to echo Commissioner Reyes' comments and welcome to Chicago on behalf of the city.
and also our heartfelt thanks for holding this hearing here. My name is Matthew Guilford, and as Digital Excellence Program Manager, I'm representing the City of Chicago Department of Innovation and Technology on behalf of Commissioner Hardeep Bhatt, who is traveling outside of the country. I wish I could say he was surveying broadband, but I think he's actually on a much-needed vacation. I'd also like to acknowledge a couple of folks, Danielle Dumer, who's a project manager on our team, who's really been critical to our success. Commissioner, all of your hard work. Dan Lyon from World Business Chicago, who's been a tremendous partner for us. Thank you so much. Mayor Daley has charged our department with implementing the Advisory Council's goal of digital excellence, which is meaningful participation with technology for all Chicagoans. And based on the vision outlined by Commissioner Reyes, years of direct engagement with small businesses, and quantitative and qualitative data, the city would like to offer 5 recommendations for helping businesses achieve digital excellence that may be relevant for the National Broadband Plan. First, the city believes that the National Broadband Plan should foster deployment of broadband infrastructure to unserved and underserved commercial and industrial areas. I think we all agree that attracting and retaining good-paying industrial and manufacturing jobs is critical for any metropolitan area that wants to maintain a vibrant middle class. Broadband is a critical resource for connecting these types of businesses to the world, but infrastructure to deliver services does not exist in many commercial and industrial areas. We acknowledge that some service providers question the business case for making these types of infrastructure investments. But at the same time, as these businesses are forced to cope with more and more costs in an economy that is less and less hospitable, it's really not reasonable to ask for them to completely bear the cost of extending infrastructure. So accordingly, to preserve the industrial diversity of America's urban areas, the city recommends that the plan provide for targeted grants to develop broadband infrastructure in commercial and industrial zones. Second recommendation is that the broadband plan should build the capacity of community-based organizations to provide technical assistance on broadband-related issues. Cities like Chicago are fortunate to have an array of nonprofit organizations dedicated to the success of small businesses. These range from groups like the Chicagoland Entrepreneurial Center to neighborhood chambers of commerce. We know that these tech-savvy business advocates can aggregate demand and foster adoption. For example, we learned today at a press conference with Mayor Daley that the 63rd Street Growth Commission is building a local Wi-Fi network. We also know that groups like the North Halstead Merchants Association in the north side of the city are deploying digital kiosks throughout their area. These same organizations can also provide technical assistance to local businesses, many of whom, as Commissioner Reyes said, are using residential-grade broadband services or are not fully leveraging technology to achieve efficiencies. And I think this directly supports, Chairman, the comment that you made about the ability of broadband to lower costs for small businesses. However, we can't take it for granted that local groups have the expertise to help small businesses maximize opportunities of the technological revolution. There is a digital divide in nonprofit organizations as well, and the city recommends that the plan promote incorporation of broadband into capacity building activities for local economic development efforts. I have 3 more points, and I think I've got a minute and a half, so I'll try to go through them relatively quickly. The third point is that the National Broadband Plan should really promote transparency of information about broadband infrastructure, service offerings, and performance to small businesses. The National Broadband Plan policy framework released by the Commission last week rightfully recognizes that increased transparency from service providers is critical for enabling more educated choices by consumers. The lack of data about performance, reliability, and coverage, crucial considerations for business operations, makes it very difficult for small businesses to independently verify providers' claims about services. So the city believes that the proposed Broadband Transparency Initiative is an important step in addressing this issue, and that it can be made even more relevant to businesses by providing detailed information about reliability and the presence of network infrastructure. The fourth recommendation is that the National Broadband Plan should ensure that America's internet infrastructure leads the world in openness and performance. It's common knowledge that the expansion of the internet has created tremendous advances in quality of life and economic growth. Preserving the open character of the internet and investing in its performance is critical for the competitiveness of small businesses, which we know already face significant barriers to broadband adoption. Requiring that small businesses pay to prioritize their content would negate the ability of the internet to level the playing field, further exacerbating economic inequality and stifling innovation at a time our cities and nation need it most. So accordingly, the city supports the Commission's efforts to enhance the openness of the internet while driving improvements in speed, mobility, and other characteristics. The last point is that the National Broadband Plan should really encourage community-wide broadband adoption as a driver of small business development. We know that small businesses can come from anywhere, and at the same time, we know that high-value workers and customers can come from anywhere. This means that in order to succeed, small businesses need broadband adoption and technology use at the community level. And this is a specific challenge in Chicago and many other cities where in some neighborhoods less than 40% of residents have broadband. Earlier today, Mayor Daley announced a major step forward with addressing this with the release of the Smart Communities Master Plan, an ambitious effort by the city and many partners to bridge the digital divide in 5 communities. We believe that this plan can drive small business development through innovative demonstration projects, and we encourage the Commission to support similar projects. The last point is just that we believe that this is a tremendous effort, that this is in some ways much overdue and very welcome. And I echo Commissioner Reyes' comments that cities and local governments are really key partners, and that we know our businesses, we know them well, and we look forward to being a partner with the FCC as you implement this plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. James?
Thank you. And I'd also like to start by thanking Chairman Janikowski for inviting me here today. From the day of his appointment, the FCC has approached the issues before it in a disciplined, pragmatic way that favors ideas that will actually work over political expediency, and we deeply appreciate it. So here we are today to talk about broadband and small business, an issue I know a lot about because my company, CBON, provides an integrated package of broadband and broadband applications to nearly 50,000 small businesses across the country, including many thousands here in Chicago. With the unemployment rate hovering around 10% and our economy seemingly mired in recession, it is a great time to be talking up this subject because it is far from a minor issue. And echoing the points in the Chairman's introductory remarks, small business inject almost $1 trillion into the economy each year. They have created more than 93% of all new jobs over the last 20 years and employ more than half of the U.S. workforce. In short, if we're going to get our economy off the shoulder and back into the fast lane, the process has to start with small business. So what can the FCC do to help? It's simple, really. The FCC can quickly adopt a few sensible rule changes that will unlock the job-creating potential of broadband businesses and drive market-based investment in innovative technology, all without a further deficit spending or increases to the national debt. Call it a cashless stimulus. Sound too good to be true? It's not, so let me explain. First, the existing problem is not that small businesses lack some level of access to broadband. Broadband in and of itself is simply not enough. What really matters to America's small businesses are the applications that are delivered over that broadband, and this is where the FCC can help. Today, the big phone companies are the only ones with access to the fattest broadband pipes, but they're focused on residential, consumer market, and large enterprise customers. This leaves small businesses out in the cold because the companies best able to innovate, to build innovative applications for small businesses are unable to access the bandwidth necessary to deliver those applications. If you doubt this, think back to 1996. That was the year Congress enacted far-sighted legislation that promoted competition in the telecom markets. And that action drove years of investment, innovation, and growth across our industry. But the age of innovation and investment in broadband technology ended several years ago when the prior administration adopted rules that had the perverse effect of locking small business-focused competitors into old T1 connections and the older broadband technologies that can be delivered over them. That's the bad news. The good news is that there's a simple fix that's almost without cost. Under your leadership, Mr. Chairman, the Commission should require the Bell companies to sell at retail prices the bandwidth necessary for competitors like CBON to provide next-generation broadband applications to small businesses and thereby begin a new cycle of innovation benefiting small business. A cashless stimulus that would really work. New broadband rules like these would allow small business to experience the efficiencies of cloud computing, off-site data security, high-resolution video conferencing, and many, many other sophisticated applications. In fact, one of these small businesses and one of CBON's Chicago customers is here today, and many of you have already been able to enjoy their products if you were enjoying any of the soft pretzels that we have in the background. Since 2005, CBON's integrated package of broadband applications has helped fuel the phenomenal growth of Kim and Scott's Gourmet Pretzels. There must be a local favorite. They're a favorite of ours, too. We've been with them as they've grown, and we like to be able to provide them with the cutting-edge broadband applications of the future that will help continue to grow. If the rules we have proposed were adopted, this could happen. Innovators like CBeyond providing broadband to small businesses would gain access to the bandwidth necessary for continued innovation, while the Bell companies would sell more bandwidth at the prices as they sell to any other customer. This truly is a solution where everybody wins. It's time we took advantage of the one approach to economic recovery that doesn't come along with a long-term economic cost. Unleashing the broadband capacity that is being monopolized by the Bells by adopting a cashless stimulus will create an immediate cycle of investment and innovation and allow America's small business, in turn, to unleash their power as the job growth engine of this economy. Thank you.
Great. Roberto.
Jim left me 30 seconds of his time. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon, and I'll focus on recommendations for that glorious day in the future when broadband will be extensively available to all of us. But as it relates specifically to small businesses, there are three key pieces that I think need to be accomplished to ensure that small businesses truly benefit from broadband and continue to serve as the driving engine for economic recovery. And one of them relates to adaptability, accessibility, and ultimately adaptability. We have to be cognizant of the cost that businesses, small businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, will incur in being able to access broadband. So we strongly encourage that there be provisions or actually economic incentive programs to ensure that small businesses do have access to broadband, to remove the barriers of cost of the actual access and equipment. And we also believe that there should be incentives to promote the development of tools and resources that will make the use of broadband much more effective for small businesses and help them more effectively leverage the availability of broadband. The other aspect is related to technical assistance needs that small businesses have, particularly minority small businesses. Is the lack of access to technical assistance that precludes small businesses from reaching their full potential. There's a dire need for technical assistance to begin with. We believe that need will grow tremendously once broadband is available on a much broader basis. I think it's important small businesses get help to learn how to use technology and leverage technology for their businesses. I think to have the SBA present, it's outstanding, and I encourage the FCC to partner with the SBA and other agencies to ensure that there are increased technical assistance resources to teach small businesses how to use and leverage technology for business growth and to more effectively and profitably manage their businesses. Without that technical assistance, broadband can essentially become meaningless to small businesses, as they would not have the means to be able to access it and use it efficiently and effectively. And lastly, for minority businesses in particular, we believe that it's important that provisions to encourage small and minority business participation in the design, implementation, and rollout of broadband be promoted or implemented by the FCC. We're seeing that in the stimulus efforts, there's been very little impact and participation by small businesses, and we're hopeful that in the broadband element that there are aggressive provisions and strategies and initiatives to ensure that small business and minority business participation does occur in a meaningful way. We're very pleased to know that the Commission recognizes the vital role that small businesses play in the economic recovery of our nation. We're excited at the opportunities that expanded broadband will play in making small businesses more profitable and give them an opportunity for growth. But again, without having allocating specific resources and initiatives to ensure that, one, small businesses do have access to broadband and remove the economic barriers to that access, and two, that small businesses have the resources to learn how to effectively use and leverage technology, will be a huge missed opportunity in the economic revitalization of our nation and this great broadband plan unless those steps are taken.
Great. Thanks, Roberto. And I think
I'm going to ask one question first, Eric, if that's
Yeah.
okay. First of all, thank you to each of the panelists for a series of excellent remarks. And I do want to thank in particular the City of Chicago and the SBA for being here. The City of Chicago on the day that there were some important announcements with respect to the Digital Excellence Initiative. And as we travel around the country to do our work, we really are paying attention to local experimentation progress that can form the basis for spreading around the country. And so it's a great day for us to be here. And Marianne, thanks for being here on the part of the SBA. The nature of broadband as a horizontal technology is such that in connection with the broadband plan, it's been very important for us to engage with different agencies around government who are focused on particular audiences or particular policy issues, but we're finding that the horizontal connectivity piece applies to many of them, and to have the SBA's expertise as part of this is very, very helpful to us, and I know the SBA has been helping in a variety of other ways. Let me ask one question before Tom goes to some of the questions we've received from the audience, and I think this is for several of you, Jim Geiger and Commissioner Reyes and Matt and others. If the Commission successfully pursued the kinds of policies that we've heard to improve the availability of high-speed broadband infrastructure to small businesses, I'm going to ask a two-part question. I apologize, but one is, and maybe Jim, this is for you. Can you give us a sense of what that could mean in terms of the number of small businesses that aren't taking advantage of these opportunities now that could? And then I think for several of you, I wanted to ask a question on the kind of adoption side on small businesses part. So that's sort of a question about getting better infrastructure to small businesses faster. How many small businesses would that help? The other question is, what are the challenges that you see in terms of small businesses, especially our smallest, small businesses of different sizes, understanding the benefits of being on the information grid? How much of a challenge is that, and what ideas do you have for us on how we can tackle that if it's a problem?
Sure. Why don't I answer that first piece? Carried with me a prop. We have a pyramid here that shows the distribution of businesses in different categories. Less than 5 employees, which we call small office, home office. 5 to 249, that is the target that CBeyond is focused on, 5 to 249 employee businesses. And above 250. In the top 25 MSAs in this country, there are only 20,000 companies with more than 250 employees, which I find astonishing. In the 5 to 250 category, there's 1.5 million, and the less than 5, there's 3.5 million. So when you talk about incremental increases, in a 20 million segment of that middle tier of that small business category, incrementally increasing 10% is a big number. It's a meaningful number. Just in the top 25 markets in this country, a couple million employees, new jobs created. And beneath that, the 3.5 million, if they average 2, there's 7 million there, and an incremental increase there, and helping those small businesses also grow from that bottom pyramid up into that top pyramid. But I think that in a couple of ways, the efforts of the Commission could help innovators like CBeyond, and through the broadband and in cloud computing, where things that are on the premise can be in the cloud, and capital expenditures shared and sold by the glass to small business. I think we could have business startups costing significantly less in that kind of an environment.
I think we provide technical assistance consulting services to entrepreneurs and small businesses by the hundreds on an annual basis, actually a program funded by the SBA. Our experience has been that there are many tools and resources available online for small businesses to enhance their business practices, increase their profitability. The challenge that businesses have is, one, just not understanding how to use those resources and those tools. And again, as broadband is expanded, the need for that assistance will grow. It it's unfortunate it becomes such a valuable asset or resource. It's completely inaccessible if businesses don't have the capacity to use them efficiently and effectively. I think is one of the biggest challenges that our country faces in terms of small businesses not having those access to the resources in a meaningful way. We have, through our programs, have a proven model that the more one-on-one counseling and technical assistance that you can provide a business to truly understand a tool like technology generates some very tangible, significant results. We have the track record of having helped companies from 1 to 2 to 3 employees grow into 12, 20, 25 employees over a period of time by providing consistent, ongoing technical assistance, helping them identify and resolve challenges that they have, and also helping them leverage the assets they have as a small business, including leveraging technology effectively.
Okay. Well, I think part of your question was, as I remember, Chairman, reasons why, and I think the reasons are basic for businesses. It's like everyone else. It's the cost, so it's accessibility. It's because some do believe that it is difficult to use. But what I would say is, I want to say 2 things about will businesses take advantage of it. First of all, the only way we are going to be successful, that your national broadband plan will be successful, is through a true partnership between the localities, the private sector, and the nonprofits and community groups, because that is the only way we are going to be able to help change and develop the mindset of those individuals who fear, if you will, using the internet. But the other thing that I want to say is, you say, will businesses take advantage? I want to tell you that on July 21st of 2009, this summer, the mayor announced his digital excellence agenda. The number 1 action item in economic development was for Chicago to have a tech expo. We had started working on it briefly before that. My department was charged with that responsibility. I just didn't know that it was going to be the number 1 item, the action item, and the event was planned for October the 1st. So July 21st, October the 1st, we had an event. We had over 1,100 participants. Again, small businesses were the majority of people that came in, and people who were interested in starting a business. We sold out the exhibit floor 4 weeks before the event to exhibitors, to global businesses, local businesses, national, regional businesses that wanted to provide, obviously, these tools. Tell me the need is there. Tell me the hunger is not there. That, to me, that event, now it's going to be an annual event, but that event to me was a testament, or part of the testimony, that small businesses do hunger for this, and that we, on a local level, need to provide it. And we can only do this also as well through the commitment of the national level. But again, I want to reiterate this. None of what we do can happen without the true partnership. And in Chicago, we have been so blessed with the private sector partners that we have. But the private sector, the nonprofits, government, and community organizations, that's how we're going to, get this to the next millennium.
So just one other point to add, and I think, Commissioner, the story about the Tech Expo is a clear indicator of the hunger in terms of these types of resources. One anecdote, we did a small informal survey with our Department of Community Development looking at industrial areas. And we talked to about 100 businesses in industrial areas. We asked them, one question we said is, what type of broadband do you have? And then what speeds do you think you need to actually maximize your business? And almost all of them said that they didn't have what they needed. So that's one data point. But I think the second question that gets at the barriers was, we asked them, what's the highest speed that's available in your area? And for the case of about 15 to 20% of businesses that responded, the answer was, we just don't know. So they just simply didn't know what services were available in their area. And there wasn't necessarily a trusted source that could actually help them sort out what is DSL, what is cable, what is a T1. So I think that awareness issue is one that is clearly a major barrier.
Good afternoon. This question is for, I guess, for all the panelists. It has to do really with adoption and underutilization rates. It's from Augustin Banin, and forgive me if I've mispronounced the name, owner of La Fogata restaurant in Pilsen in Chicago. He says, as a small business owner, he'd like to use the internet to expand his business and reach more customers, but he's limited by lack of training, as well as he's limited by residents' use of the internet. So his question is, what recommendations would you have for the FCC regarding use of federal resources to expand access to places like Pilsen that have a high Spanish language population? So really we're talking about, I mean, as we know, with Spanish-speaking populations, the low utilization rate for the internet is still extensive. So how would you address that, and what would you recommend that the FCC do?
I would hate to jump in front of Roberto on that. Their name and address, and we'll send over a bilingual salesperson, is one way we can help. I mean, really what I respect, and I think the word partnership is a very important one, and with private industry as well. And really what I guess I represent on the panel is somebody who's longing for to have the power of the innovators to be released through just some simple rule changes that the FCC could adopt. Because there are companies just like mine who are thirsting to go teach people how to use virtual private networks, how to use broadband capability for storage and archiving, how to make their businesses more efficient and their employees more productive. That's precisely our mission statement at CBON. And I truly believe not only would it be in our best interest to have a broader access to higher speeds, but there would be people that followed us to fill that gap in the communities that you're speaking about.
So I would just say, building on that point, the importance of those investments that they're made by the federal government to be tied to community-level planning and really grassroots outreach. So we know, for example, we commissioned a study from the University of Illinois at Chicago to look at broadband adoption across all 77 community areas in the city. And we found that the barriers just varied tremendously between areas that predominantly Latino and Hispanic versus areas that were African American, in terms of, is cost more of a barrier? Is the lack of content that's culturally appropriate a barrier? So the focus on community is really important. And the plan that Mayor Daley unveiled this morning, looking at 5 smart communities and really trying to focus on a process that's grounded in the needs of individual residents and businesses, we think is something that could be a model for other places.
And actually, one of those communities is Pilsen, by the way. So.
Yeah, I think the question highlights that the opportunity that the Commission has to put in place a truly comprehensive national broadband plan. I think the focus has been on making broadband or the internet much more widely available to everyone. I think in the case of small businesses, there's a need for a very strategic focus to ensure that as it becomes available, that businesses have the opportunity to leverage the technology. I think the availability of high-speed internet is kind of market-driven. I think the investment has been made where there is an expectation of a greater return. I think with the involvement of the Federal Communications Commission and any investment the federal government would make, I think it would help ensure that there is broad availability in those communities where market demand has not been there in the past. But probably the most important point is that the general notion about greater broadband availability, I think, has been on making it universally available to everyone. I think there is an opportunity to make it very strategic and focused on utilizing it as an economic development tool in local communities that will give businesses access to tools that they haven't had previously, including the training to be able to use it effectively, and also to make available resources to communities to enhance job skills and all the great things that are available through the internet.
I would just quickly echo Roberto's comments about training being essential. Again, the SBA offers free training. We have resource sheets in the hallway that will point anyone here to our local resources. We have SBDCs, SCORE, and women's business centers that offer free training. They do it in the seminar, sort of forum, but they can also do it one-on-one where they can offer you tailored suggestions about how to use broadband as a tool to strengthen the way you manage your business.
If I may, since we're going to be headed towards the summer season, right after this winter season, I would highly recommend that the FCC create a job program for youth. I mean, the youth, high school students and college students are so savvy when it comes, and maybe you should have a jobs program where you can partner high school students and college students to, in fact, go into community organizations, community groups, to help businesses. But I think that there is absolutely a framework here, as announced today, to assist and develop this skill set that is much needed.
We've been talking a little bit about, well, you've all mentioned what things you'd like to see in the National Broadband Plan. I'd like to get your thoughts on if there are provisions that you think might be out there that you think would be problematic for small businesses and diverse businesses if it appears in the National Broadband Plan.
Well, from our perspective, I think there's a need to take a very close look at how procurement would take place. I think there's a need to ensure that there are real opportunities for small businesses, minority businesses, to participate in the investment of hundreds of billions of dollars to expand broadband availability. Again, we are yet to see the effective use of federal resources through the stimulus programs to ensure minority and small business participation. I think there's a strong need to have a robust program that is enforceable, that is carefully looked at, carefully crafted, and measurable to ensure that there is real opportunity for small businesses.
Wearing my hat also as the Commissioner of Consumer Affairs or Consumer Protection for the city, the one thing I add is that, again, we are the first responders when things are happening to consumers, when they're not getting the services that they thought they were paying for, when they're being sold a bill of goods. We are the first responders. And so, again, I would just echo that whatever plan is that there must be a place for localities to be able to effectively represent the rights of our business consumers and our consumers locally. Locally, they come to us when they're getting ripped off. They don't go to the FCC, respectfully. They come to us.
I think that one of the things that I guess is very important, I know, for making capital investments, and Roberto's talked about that earlier, is clarity. I think just having a very clear framework, whatever that framework is, and we certainly can help with our ideas, but I think that business investment follows that clarity and that framework. So I would say that that's an important element of whatever comes out.
Yeah, may I just add one thing on that? I think that any regulatory framework for business sense and the consumer sense really does need, and I want to echo what you just said, predictability, clarity, and simplicity. The rules can't change from person to person or interest group to interest group. Plain language, they need to know what is expected of them and what their rights are. So that's very important in anything that is laid out for the consumer and for businesses.
Just one last comment regarding that the private sector has made a massive investment in bringing broadband, the internet, to most of us. And we're very excited to see such a great public-private partnership moving forward. I think that there ought to be incentives and encouragement for the private sector to continue to make the huge investment that they've already made, especially considering that it appears that the federal government will likely, or is already running out of resources to make its own investment. But I think it's an ideal scenario where there is that true partnership among the public sector and the private sector to make this happen.
Thank you, and thanks to all the panelists, Roberto, James, Matthew, Marianne, and Norma. One of the things that's very important about this proceeding that's going on at the FCC is the importance of getting out of Washington and hearing from people that are working with small businesses directly, which is what has been really great about this particular panel. For those questions which were not asked, they do get into the record, and I will be putting them in my briefcase and taking them back to Washington to our team to work through them. Here they are. I promise they will go in my, I'll put them in my notebook. Please also go to broadband.gov. One of the things that happens whenever we do these field hearings is there's actually a million topics that are important. Small business is a very important one. I think Chicago, as one of the great collections of small businesses in America, it's a great place to have this particular discussion. But to the extent that there are other issues, please go to broadband.gov. There have been open proceedings online and places for questions and dialogue. So please use those tools and participate in the other proceedings that we have on different issues around broadband. In terms of where we go next, we would, since the plan is due to Congress in about 60 days, we really don't have much time. So we're going to cancel the break and ask for the next panel to switch in kind of in mid-game here. So if we could ask, first off, a round of applause for our panelists on the first panel. Thank you. And we will do a very, very quick switch and just get started right away. Yeah, I think the way to frame it is this is... If everyone could have a seat, let's get started on panel number 2, since we are making the change in mid-flight here. So if everyone could just have a seat. So the last panel, as mentioned, was hearing from different resources here in Chicago that have been working directly with small businesses on different programs, whether they were things going on at the mayor's office or things going on with the SBA. All of this ultimately serves small businesses. And the second panel is really about hearing from some entrepreneurs who are actually, out creating businesses and using broadband to do different things. And to introduce that panel, I'd like to turn it over to Thomas Reed from the FCC.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon again. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here. By way of introduction, I am Director of the Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And just to tell you a little bit about what that office does in the FCC, it really serves two functions. The first is to sort of watchdog issues, rules and regs that come out of the FCC, and and look at them with a critical eye to see how they impact the competitive interests of small and diverse businesses. So that's one aspect of what we do. The second aspect is really a business development aspect. We have a platform at OCBO which we like to use as a driver for new business in telecom and communications, and also second-tier businesses that are ancillary to communications businesses. And so we do that by, in our view, bringing stakeholders together around issues that are of import to small telcos and diverse businesses. So that's really our platform. I don't want to spend too much time, as I know we're pressed for time, and I want to make sure that our panelists have plenty of time to express their views. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our office. I certainly want to make sure that I meet everybody on the panel, since you are my constituents. So when you come to DC, we are a conduit to the chair. So when you can't get him, because he's a busy man, you can get us, and we can bang on his door for you. So with that, I'd like to have the panel begin.
Hello. My name is Ed Scanlon. I'm the founder and CEO of Total Attorneys. Total Attorneys is about a 200-person company here in the city of Chicago, providing technology-enabled services to over 1,000 small law firms nationwide. Our mission is improving lives through innovation in both access and delivery of legal services. And the use of broadband is required for our business to grow, and we also believe required for consumers to reach access to needed legal services. So I'll talk about two areas, both the attorney customers we service as well as their client consumers. First off, small law firms represent 80% of attorneys in private practice. There are 220,000 small law firms in the United States as defined by under 10 attorneys. That's 590,000 lawyers represented in that group. There are currently 3 million consumers online looking for legal services every single month, and that number continues to grow. Attorneys, by nature of small law firms, oftentimes do not run as efficiently as they could because of the lack of access to outsourcing support services, technology, and process innovation. So for law firms without broadband access, they find themselves at a competitive disadvantage to those that do have it, and in turn end up charging consumers possibly more money for legal services because they're not able to run as efficiently as they could. Our company operates marketing cooperatives where attorneys are able to pool their resources together to market online and try and market their services to consumers who may be in need of legal services. We also operate a call center 24/7 to help them answer the phone 24/7. We also offer web-based software for law firms to be able to use software to coordinate all this. And our latest service offering is actually helping lawyers fill out documents and prepare legal documents and outsourcing the administrative aspects of delivery of their core legal service. Without the internet, we're unable to deliver these services to law firms. And without broadband, it becomes increasingly difficult to push large files over the internet to places that don't have broadband. So for both the growth of our business as well as law firms operating as efficiently as possible, we believe broadband is important. On the consumer side, there are consumers, by many, many, many reports, they don't know where to turn for legal services. There are major access issues to consumers looking for legal services. They don't know where to turn, and oftentimes, some reports as many as 60% of the time, when they have a legal issue that should be dealt with, they choose not to, and I'm sure often infuriating the issue. So by allowing consumers to have broadband access, they can find sites like ours. TotalBankruptcy.com is a website that we run. There's over 1,400 pages of educational content that consumers can read through. And then upon reading all this information, they can select if they'd like to have a free legal evaluation from the sponsoring advertising attorney from that site, or they can click the back button and go to 3,400 other sites, I'm sure, that have the same types of services on Google. The consumer that doesn't have high-speed access finds themselves at a disadvantage because they don't have access to that content. And we firmly believe that a very well-educated consumer in legal matters, as well as one that has instant and immediate access to legal service providers, such as law firms and small law firms nationwide, will find themselves in a better life situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Hi, my name is Jay Sharman. I'm the CEO of Teamworks Media here in Chicago. We specialize in visual storytelling that impacts lives. We're a content company. 10 years ago, I'd tell you we're a production company. But the world has evolved to a place where we need to create visual stories, whether documentary, online webisodes, motion pictures, or TV series. But at the core of what we do, we tell stories. We need to be able to tell those stories in different platforms because our goal is to ensure that we get our stories in front of the proper audience. And so broadband is at the centerpiece of the growth of our industry, which is in a major state of disruption at this point. We're a 9-year-old company. We actually have a digital media division called Knowledge Interactive. So broadband is critical not only to us internally for our creation of stories, but for our clients and how we can facilitate their stories being told better on the internet, which is a key part of any marketing mix of anyone telling their own story at this point. Really, the impact of broadband comes in two ways. One is consumer-facing for us, and where we see the growth really for our company, and that is truly in the online. Right now, home video 5 years ago, even as recent as 5 years ago, was a major revenue stream on any story. DVDs, the aftermarket, that market is getting killed right now. The advent of all types of online outlets, you may have heard of Hulu and all these different types of online shops that are out there, are critical to a revenue stream, and it's really displacing the home video market. It's critical that the more people that have broadband, not only in the Chicago area, but those nationally, have access to the stories that we're telling. Another place, we believe that where it's going in terms of we're big supporters of broadband in the home. As the increase of web-enabled television continues to grow, that enables more people to enjoy their own consumption habits of media in their home. They're not beholden to a network for distribution of shows. They'll be able to experience that in their home, which helps companies like us. Internally, it helps as well. We're only as good as the stories we have access to. We have places on our specific website where people actually contribute stories, where we find stories. But there, once we actually start developing a story, it's critical as part of our workflow. Right now, actually this morning, there's a voiceover that's going on in Los Angeles for a documentary we're doing, which will be sent via broadband to our company so that they can in real time edit that. File sharing, sourcing footage from around the world where you may need a specific shot that's held somewhere else. It's all part of the necessary speed of process of what we do in developing and building the stories that we have. And essentially, there's a relatively tight-knit community here. I know Gordon, you'll hear from him in a couple minutes. Tight-knit creative community in the content space here in Chicago. The perception out there is that you need to be in New York or Los Angeles, or the perception was you needed to be in New York or Los Angeles to be a player in the content space. And really, I think there's several companies here that have proven that's not the case, that you can build a company right here in Chicago in the content space, in the media world. However, broadband is critical for growth for us to compete with both coasts and really foster and help build the creative community here in Chicago.
Hi there, Craig Shields, president of Gray Mills Corporation. We're a manufacturer located on the north side of the city. I'm also on the board of Norbic, a Chicago-based industrial development and retention group that's part of the Alliance for Illinois Manufacturing. I mean, the obvious question, I guess, would be, why does a mid-sized metal cutter like Gray Mills care about broadband? It doesn't really seem intuitive. It's probably worth going back a few steps to explain why it's not only important but crucial to our success, in my opinion. There's two myths that come up a lot about manufacturing. One is that manufacturing's dead. Who cares what this guy has to say? I mean, manufacturing's gone. It's all offshore. Forget him. Actually, between the end of the early 90s recession and the start of our current recession, domestic manufacturing output doubled. It's a crucial part of our economy. And in the small to mid-sized sector, it's been a big growth engine actually for a lot of good paying jobs, especially for people with high school and technical school degrees. The second myth would be that manufacturers want trade barriers in order to succeed. Actually, if I had a choice between broadband and trade barriers, I'd take better broadband any time. Trade barriers raise my cost of components and of goods. In fact, the steel tariffs about 5-6 years ago drove me from a profit to a loss. So thanks, Al. That's help. I'll turn it down. Broadband is, however, crucial to me. In manufacturing, our biggest threat is coming from Asia. It's India and China. And though they've got a lot of advantages, they do have a weakness. And the weakness is that they build big quantities, and they have to put things on ships to come over here. Even if they're able to compete with the American niche of small quantities, fast delivery, and flexibility, it's still the issue that they have to put things on ships to come over, and ships aren't getting any faster. So that means if American manufacturers want to succeed, grow, and add jobs, they need speed and they need flexibility. When they improve in those two areas, they do add good paying jobs to the American workforce. Hands down, no question. So what does that mean? How do you improve speed and flexibility in a manufacturing company? We all know about the sales side. We can put up a storefront, we can buy keywords, we can do all that stuff. But there's a lot of back office, production side broadband uses that aren't necessarily common knowledge, and that's what Eric asked me to talk about. When I came in to the company, everything was two-dimensional drawings. You'd send them off by mail to a tool maker. They'd build something and send it back to you. We've improved to 3D CAD to solid models, and in fact have gotten to the point where we're interactive with our customers. An example would be Ward. Ward is a manufacturer out of Maryland. They make box printing machines. They wanted to buy some of our inking systems to go into the machine, but it's a very tight fit. So we're able to come up with a design, host a webinar with them. They sent us all of their solid models beforehand. We could actually put our equipment into theirs, and in real time in Chicago and Maryland, our engineers and their engineers could play with the designs and actually make sure everything fit as it was needed and suggest modifications to all of the products. That has led to a large number of sales and actually a couple new jobs at our company to build the products. And one of the key reasons why we got that bid was because we were able to do this interactive process. That's great where it stands. It's not good enough. And if we want to grow as a company, we need more access to broadband to do bigger things. Taking the example I just gave one step further, what we cannot do is actually have collaborative work on the product in real time. Because of broadband limitations, we have 100 meg files, and we can't just simply zap those back and forth with any sort of ease whatsoever. So we're forced to do everything in steps, where we can make some modifications, send them back to people, have another webinar. It slows things down. If we had better speed, we could actually, in real time, suggest modifications, make them, check stress analysis, see if it worked, have their engineers play with it, and actually come up with a working product in a couple hours as opposed to a couple weeks. And like I said before, for us, speed is crucial. Speed equals jobs. The better broadband we get, the more speed we get, and the more jobs we can create. That's about it.
Great. I'm Gordon Quinn from Cartemquin Films, and we also are content producers. We started as a small business. Many years ago, we evolved into a not-for-profit. But I think there are a lot of opportunities for public and private partnerships in this area. Some of our work, most well-known, is Hoop Dreams, The New Americans, Milking the Rhino, about community-based conservation in Africa, and many other films. A lot of our work shows on PBS, but we're also on NBC. We also have experimented with iTunes and Hulu as a way of getting our work to the public. I actually went to the University of Chicago over 40 years ago, so I have a tendency to come back to first principles, and I think it's wonderful that you've come to the city of Chicago, because this is a place with a real history in terms of media and community and public space and the battles that have been fought around that. And I just want to say I echo everything that was said on the first panel, particularly the people from the city of Chicago, who I think were really talking about one of the key issues. which it's not just access. It's what you can do with that access and what kind of skills and training you've had to be able to utilize it. But I just want to read a quote from John Dewey because I think it raises another dimension of this. Artists have always been the real purveyors of the news, for it's not the outward happening itself which is new, but the kindling by it of emotion, perception, and appreciation. And so one of the things that I get concerned about, or what I see, people come to us, we're a community organization, institution, they want to get on the web, they may be a community organization, they may be a small business, they want to tell their story, and once they're on the web, once they have that access, how do they actually tell the story? What's the narrative? What's the emotional, human content? It can be, many years ago we used to do industrials, and there are industrials that are hard for people to watch, and there are industrials, when you have the right audience, they're like right there with you because they know how to tell a story. So I think that's an important dimension. I think that with the FCC, as broadband evolves, one of the things I become concerned about is regulation, because regulations are good. Regulations have had a real history in this city. However broadband rolls out, it's using the public airwaves, or they're tearing up our streets and alleys and putting in cables, or they're on the telephone poles. And we need to see universal service. We need to see accessibility. People talked about neighborhoods. People talked, I think earlier, about the disabled and language issues. There's also, in Illinois, we have a tremendous rural population that we want to be connected to. And I think it's important to think about those rural populations. It's very important to understand that the providers of broadband cannot be competing with their own content or content which they're getting some extra pay for. That creates an unfair advantage to them. And, I know net neutrality isn't the word that's being used right now, but whatever that is, that levels that playing field and makes sure we can't be exploited in that way. And just a little piece of history. We have a terrific public access situation here in Chicago. We have a big institution. Many of the people that are helping small businesses and communities to get on the net with content got their training at the big public access facility that came out of the city really demanding things back from the cable companies when they got the franchises to lay the cables. This was years ago. This was in the 70s. But when we were fighting for it, there would be 200 people in a room representing all of these different organizations. There was leadership people from all kinds of organizations, communities, neighborhoods. The churches saw tremendous potential in this, and it sort of played out. And so I think in thinking about how broadband should roll out, we should look at some of the lessons learned from public access, and we should also look at some of the things that have undercut it. The ways in which now, as public access is now going to be possibly on broadband, and seeing that it's going to be, they want to put it on a lower tier, so it's harder for users to find it and for the people who want to see it to find it. I'll maybe just close real quickly with, again, a restatement of what we want. We want equal access to the net for content creators and the public. The danger of service providers favoring their own or product content or money products that they can make money from carrying is at the heart of the issue, and in some sense is already here. Thank you.
Chairman Janikowski, Mr. Reed, and Mr. Garr, thank you for an opportunity to speak here today about the benefits of accessible, affordable broadband to small businesses. WIDIA is a Chicago-based nonprofit that is working to make diagnostic imaging and telemedicine available in resource-poor areas in the U.S. and abroad. We do this by helping medical facilities to get affordable imaging and telemedicine equipment, and by connecting them with the medical specialists who can assist them with diagnosis and treatment of patients. The issue of broadband availability is an important one for us because high-speed connectivity is a key requirement for for the successful implementation of any WIDIA solution. The transmission of information, diagnostic x-rays, and live video for telemedicine all depend on the availability, cost, and reliability of broadband networks. In rural areas where the quality and accessibility of care can be improved by connecting medical providers to specialists located elsewhere, the challenge is one of broadband access. In low-income, underserved parts of major metropolitan areas where community health centers are in a position to play a major role in reducing health disparities in healthcare expenditures, the broadband challenge is one of cost. In a country such as ours, medical imaging for the most part is digital. Digital images increase the quality, the speed, and efficiency of diagnosis. But the value of digital images is minimized when the ability to transmit those images becomes a limiting factor. Lack of adequate bandwidth can have a negative impact on a patient's experience with the healthcare system and their health outcomes by increasing both the time and the expense they incur in search of a diagnosis and treatment. Additionally, imaging centers and medical facilities themselves are small businesses, and the cost of transmitting diagnostic images to specialists can consume a meaningful portion of their operating budgets. Technology has come a long way in making it possible to leverage limited medical resources over large geographic areas. The cost of this technology continues to decrease, putting it within reach of many medical providers in low-resource areas, enabling them to improve the quality of care they're able to offer their patients. However, telecommunications infrastructure can serve as a limiting factor to the utilization of these resources, keeping providers limited to the same standard of care that was the status quo 20 years ago. For example, when I was 15, I suffered from debilitating episodic headaches. The first episode occurred when I was away with my classmates in downstate Illinois at a school retreat. I was rushed to an emergency room and given a CT scan. The physicians weren't able to figure out what was wrong with me, and they recommended that I go back to Chicago to see a neurologist. So the next morning, one of my teachers took me and the CT images of my brain back to Chicago. Now, at that time, that was the best way in order to get those images to where they needed to be. One would think that now, given the advances in technology, that would be a thing of the past. However, in many parts of the country, a two-door Ford Escort traveling down the highway has a greater bandwidth than the telecommunications infrastructure. So just to give you an example, how big are these films? Well, an MRI, a typical MRI, can be as large as 100 megabytes. Now, depending upon the number of images, or the slices as they're called, the level of detail available in that image, they can be much larger. If you're talking about mammography or CT, the files get even bigger. So if a medical provider wants to send one image, one patient image, or one patient study to a specialist, and they're using, say, fiber, they're sending it over fiber, it could take a matter of a few seconds to send it. Over DSL, 10 to 20 minutes. Dial-up, it'll never happen. So, and if those are just still images. If we're talking about live video for telemedicine, if they can't send an MRI, then they can't leverage the resources available to provide a telemedicine consultation, which you need clear streaming video for. So even in a metropolitan area like Chicago, challenges with broadband can impact the accessibility and quality of care. In these areas, the question is not only sometimes can a provider connect, but also at what cost. A community center operating multiple modalities, sending images to multiple specialists, or leveraging telemedicine could spend $10,000 per month on their broadband access. That is not an insignificant component of their operating budget. So in summary, I would just like to say that healthcare in general can benefit from an expansion of accessible, affordable broadband. Limited resource medical providers in particular, though, stand to gain tremendously from access because they can then connect to resources that are available if they can simply access them. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I have to say, I think this has been an excellent panel, as was the previous one, and I want to thank the FCC staff that scoured the internet to put together these great panels. I'm going to ask a paired question, and then Tom and Eric will have some additional questions, including questions we've received online or from the people in this room. Before I do that, let me say that we a lot of very helpful input here on the importance of content, the importance of training, the importance of adoption, learning lessons from history, focusing on an open internet, understanding the challenges of the disabled when it comes to this infrastructure. 10% of Americans are disabled. It's an incredible number. And the importance of rural, and I like the way that it was framed in terms of, it's an essential part of the market, part of the audience. I'd like to, one of the things that's interesting about this panel is that we have content creators, we have someone who's working on service, we have someone who's working on healthcare, we have a manufacturer. I'd like to ask each of you, let's just go down the line, just talk very briefly about two aspects of what we're looking at. One is speeds. Ivy touched on it a little bit at the end, but for you to accomplish what you want to do, now and say 5 years from now, what do you want to see the infrastructure allow you to have at your business and allow the customer have in order to get the benefits of the businesses that you're trying to pursue? And then second, if each of you could comment on mobile broadband and the relevance to you of being able to, both to you and your customers or your audience, being able to tap into our information grid, not just while plugged into the wall, but also while being mobile. So speed, mobile, if we could just go down the line, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. First of all, Ms. Walker, thank you for correcting my form. I'd like to thank the chairman and Mr. Reed and Mr. Gar for having me here. I realize I neglected that when I started. So from a speed standpoint, one of the merging areas in law right now is virtual law practices, where lawyers are able to deliver services either to those who can't make it to their office due to distance or disability, or those types of services that don't require in-person meeting and can be done over the phone and through the internet. There are a number of companies fulfilling this need, mainly with web technologies, and video will be a key component. So I would say for speeds, for lawyers to be able to better service consumers and increase that access to legal service, I think speeds that would facilitate streaming video back and forth and sending files of 50 meg or greater is probably cable modem or better. From the mobile market, mobile marketing I think is going to be huge in the legal field, just like everyone. The ability to pull up on a phone and speak to Google and say, I was in a car accident, I need legal advice, and something comes up, or I have a child custody issue and something comes up, and based on location, there are lawyers that you can physically walk to or click a button and speak to right over your phone. The immediacy of legal information when people are looking for it is something that helps those who need legal services reach out and find them. So I would say mobile will play a very large part in legal.
Likewise, I omitted the thank you for having me on the panel, so thank you for having me. From a speed perspective, I can't get as metric-driven as Ivy did on a specific bandwidth. However, I can tell you that the baseline, I guess, metric I would use in layman's terms would be real-time streaming video. It's critical for our consumers to be able to view content and for us internally to send content in a way that you can have a pleasurable viewing experience of the content. That's critical for us. I think from a speed perspective, we had to take the onus 9 years ago. We actually had to buy and build fiber, bring fiber right to the door, which cost us tens of thousands of dollars. We just renegotiated a lease, and it was prohibitive for us to move because of those costs. We had to incur the cost of bringing fiber right up to the door, which for a company of our size is a deal breaker. So, and similarly, I think it's an onerous expense. To that same tune, we spend 5 figures in unnecessary shipping a year, probably sometimes closer to 6 figures in just shipping for the same reasons that Ivy outlined in terms of deadlines and format function. So from a mobile perspective, similarly, as long as we can ensure pleasurable real-time streaming experience for the consumer, that's critical for the success of us as we move forward.
Hi, I'd like to say I actually did remember to thank the commission, but I didn't want to make Jay and Ed look bad, so I just...
Nice guy. Thank you.
In terms of speed, as I mentioned before, our next leap forward is to do things in real time, do our 3D CAD in real time with our partners, be it a customer or a tool maker or vendor, and to pull everyone together. Right now, that takes, because the files are too big to do anything remotely resembling real time, it can take several weeks to go through all the steps. If we could trade 100 meg files in a matter of, say, a minute, so we could do things in relatively real time, we could shrink our cycle time to develop a new product down dramatically and be faster to the market and therefore more jobs. So for me, if I had to put a metric on it, 100 meg file in a matter of, say, a minute would be good. In terms of mobile, we have a lot of salespeople in the field, and right now they need to call back for delivery, for pricing on customs. Most of the things we do are custom. And two things. One is it slows people down. It takes a lot of labor on the inside sales force to deal with all these calls because they're never spread out. They seem to come in big waves. But also when we're trying to sell a high-tech solution, it doesn't make us look good that right now we don't have the capability to do this wirelessly. The reason why our ERP system has too big of a database, and I don't know the technical parts behind it, but we cannot, under current broadband, use our ERP system remotely. So our salespeople have no choice but to call, even though we're promoting ourselves as a high-tech company. So it's a little bit embarrassing, but right now we don't have a choice. So for me, the mobile side, the ability for these salespeople in the field to, in real time, interact with our ERP system would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo everything that Jay said in terms of being a content producer and real-time video. I think the other thing, and it's not exactly about bandwidth as such, but I think it is important, and I think someone on the first panel spoke to this, which is real-time video is compressed. You get on iTunes, you get on Hulu. There are a few companies who are handling this, and I think it's going to be very important moving forward that, I mean, we do compression internally, but the ones that are really getting it out there are the ones that have these proprietary systems. And if they are controlled by the people who control the pipe, then we have a problem. In other words, there are people out there who are going to come out with better and better forms of compression, and we need to make sure those are the people who can come knock on our door and say, hey, we can get your stuff out and out to the customer, and we'll work out, those smaller. So I think that's very important. In terms of mobile, it's also relevant to us. It's being used in all kinds of ways. I have to confess I am a little bit horrified when our big HD movie shot in Africa, and the guy says, oh, it was fantastic. I watched it on my iPhone coming down on the train, So I think, there are some age issues there. But it obviously is going to be very, very important, and we just heard on the news, I think, that AT&T is sort of saying to its customers, can you stop sending so much video to each other? And it's like, my response would be, well, one, you sold the service, but two, what about all the video that you're sending out for your commercial partners? So what's more important, what I want to send to someone that I know or that I just as a consumer want to get from peer to peer, or something that's coming through a push?
Well, so to your question, let me not give the impression that I am a broadband expert. I know just enough to be dangerous. But I would say speeds of 50 megabytes a second would be really good. A gigabyte per second, great, but let's not get crazy. As relates to the mobile broadband question, one of the challenges, at least in the space that I'm working in, is the reliability of mobile broadband. So, for example, a radiologist right now can get an application called eFilm for iPhone, which is eFilm is the #1 viewer for digital images. And they can look at it on their iPhone. But for those of you who have iPhones like me, you know it can be very unreliable. And so it doesn't make it conducive to actually using mobile networks for medical purposes. The other thing is mobile broadband could be good for asynchronous telemedicine, meaning you don't actually need a live video. You can send still images and information to the physician on the other end, and they can respond when they're available. Mobile broadband would be great for that, but again, the reliability is an issue for that.
Thank you. Tom?
Great.
Eric?
I have one, and then I'm sure Tom has a couple as well. I'd like to build on Jay's comment about having to put fiber into your facility and then that kind of constraining your choice about where you can put your business. And I'd like to ask the others, how does, all of you have presumably made decisions about where you're located. How has broadband and the ability to get access and the options available to you affected that choice?
It was not much of a deciding factor. Our office is in downtown Chicago, so we definitely had a lot of options for bandwidth. We have a policy that people are allowed to do whatever they want, so we have people streaming stuff constantly and on many social networks, and Hulu and Netflix movies show up being watched every now and then on the wire. And we really feel it's good to have our employees out there understanding how all these communication channels are working. So we actually just ordered a 100 meg pipe, and it's not put in yet, but I think the cost is comparatively to putting fiber in a few years ago very affordable. I think it was under $2,000 per month for 100 megs in Chicago. So to me that seems, if you need 100 megs, you should be able to afford a couple $1,000.
Yeah, I think Eric, I won't take much longer since I made the point earlier. I think one thing though too, and Gordon may add to this, is that the challenge we have is that we don't need that large pipe all the time, but it's kind of the lowest common denominator or highest common denominator, depending how you look at it, in terms of when you do need that burst, you need a rather robust pipe to get through, but you're paying for that full pipe. And so that's one of the challenges if there was some type of elasticity on use, but the current options that are out there, that's not an option for us.
And just to add on to that, if you were sharing use, so you'd be able to burst, because there are some shared uses in buildings. You can go in and you can have the ability to share use, but then your reliability of being able to burst when you need to isn't there. So something that said you're guaranteed to be able to hit a meg out the door anytime you need, or 100 meg or whatever it is, and you only pay for what you use, I think that would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'd like to echo Jay's comments. We don't need that pipe 95% of the time. It's that 5% where we need to have a guarantee that we could burst when we're doing these webinars and trying to trade files back and forth. For us, $2,000 per month to have that all the time, it would be wasted money we could spend elsewhere. But if we could pay a smaller amount but have access to that when we need it, kind of bandwidth on demand, that would be huge. But in terms of Eric's actual question, it wasn't really a decision. We looked at a couple new buildings. Ours was really based more around just trying to find something in the size we were looking for. We're in a weird mid-size, so bandwidth would have been the next step, but we never found a building. So.
Yeah, and for us, we own our building. We've been there for over 30 years, and we're out in a neighborhood. We're in West Lakeview, and when we first got online, we've had some real difficulties. We've been through DSL. I think now we're on through cable, which has enormous limitations. But one of the things that we were finding is we would see these ads and, you can get this, and then the answer would come back, but not in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I think that for us was a very important issue, and we actually did some, finding out, I forgot what it's called, but where the head is for DSL, how many miles were involved and all that kind of craziness, and sort of going back and say, well, gee, we seem to be within the thing, can't we get it, and pushing back a little bit, and then sometimes they would say, yes, gee, you're right, you can get it. So I think the question of coverage for an urban area, even like Chicago, where you would think, I think somebody on the first panel spoke to it, we assume that it's available in every neighborhood, and there's tremendous disparities, which was a little shocking to me when I found it out.
So for us, it's just a little bit different. It's not where we're located that matters. It's where our clients are located, and they are located in areas where coverage is spotty, if available at all. So location for us matters for the reverse reason. Those are the people who absolutely need it the most. They need to be connected with medical resources that don't exist in their areas, and yet that connectivity is a limiting factor.
This question is for Craig. Craig, you're in a traditional business, manufacturing. I wanted to get a sense of what challenges you faced or you've seen as your company has transitioned to digital. You talked about greater efficiencies as a benefit, but in using digital and using the internet. What challenges have you seen in that transition?
There's been a few. Really two ways to look at it. One is on the sales side and one is on the production side. On the sales side, the challenges we've seen are really unknown competitors who have been able to set up shop and come after us without the expense of a sales force. So, of course, you can counter and do the same thing back to them, but it's been the non-traditional competitor that you didn't expect coming has been definitely a challenge. And sort of like the reverse side of broadband, this is where it bit us because now broadband gave them the opportunity to get into a field they weren't previously in. On the production side, the challenge has really been trying to figure out which tools will help us speed up the most. Like I said before, speed is jobs. And there's a lot of tools and a lot of money you can spend out there when you get into digitizing or any kind of digital work. Trying to make sure we're spending money wisest and not really having good neutral resources to go to on that has been tough. We had to do a lot of homework ourselves. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not. But.
I got a question from the audience for Ed. It's from Mark Goldberg. And he asks, what percentage of law offices have no access to broadband? I don't know if you've looked at this. And to the extent that you've looked at that question, what do you believe is keeping those small offices from getting on the internet?
I don't have a direct number on broadband access, but I do have one that may correlate. Under 30% of law firms, of those 220,000 firms I mentioned, have a website at all. So there may be some correlation there, which once again hurts access to legal services if lawyers don't even have a website on the internet. And I can tell you why they don't have one is mainly because they don't know where to get started. And I imagine there are numbers published on lawyers' access to broadband, and it's probably the same type of an issue. They don't know where to turn. They're busy. Most lawyers work a lot, so for their free time to go out and try and research a new fast internet provider, it's not the top of their list. They have client needs to attend to.
I actually have a question for the content creators. I think, Gordon, you alluded to this when you talked about watching the movie filmed in Africa on the iPod. I remember I was at a conference in Denver with a number of content creators, and they were talking about just the multiplicity of platforms. How you could go from watching a football game on your flat screen to being in New York and getting CNN streamed live in the cab to watching a movie on the plane to watching something on your laptop and then downloading something on your phone. So there's so many platforms now. From a content creation standpoint, what challenges does that present for you? And this is really for Gordon and Jay.
I think Jay referred to some of this in his comments, which is we have to meet the challenge of figuring out how to get onto these platforms. On the other hand, a lot of these platforms aren't generating any income or very little income for us. They're generating income for the middleman. And so that's just a challenge that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, to echo that sentiment, I think it's really changing the business model because those in the major markets have, through the AT&Ts and Comcasts have now changed their viewing habits. There's market research out there that shows that people want it now where they want it, whether it's on demand, whether it's on their phone, and the expectation is there, and it's expected to be for free, which comes with part of your package and your service provider, which for folks like us, as Gordon alluded to, that's the middleman. The challenge becomes, free content available out there equals how do you make money on that. And so it's really changing as a paradigm shift in terms of how to make money on the content now, where before it used to be a pretty simple dynamic. And that's really both a challenge, but I think also a big opportunity as well.
Great. One last question for Ivy, and we are then closely running out of time here. Ivy, you mentioned quite a bit about the importance of having networks in place to reach the different communities that you all work in. What else do you see from an adoption standpoint in those communities? Because I think there's, at least what we hear about healthcare is that, to be sure, there is an infrastructure problem here, and I don't want to make light of that. But we also have a profession that's kind of adjusting to new technology in certain ways. I'm curious what lessons you have on that side of the equation.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the area that we work in, most specifically imaging, is probably on the cutting edge of the adoption of technology. It's the nature of radiology. It's the nature of the tools that they use. It's the nature of the training of radiologists. So they tend to be one of the groups that are least challenged by the adoption of new technology. However, when you look at the clinical setting, when you look at the medical practices themselves, I go back to the comment I made earlier, which is that they are in themselves small businesses. And some of the comments that we heard from the earlier panel about technical assistance is very important. How do you utilize the technology? You know what you want the end result to be. What are your options for getting there? How do you utilize that technology, and what resources are available to help you to acquire it? And that's really what an organization like WIDIA does. So they come to us with a problem, with a challenge. They need to access better medical resources, better medical partners to help deliver health care. What's available? So just like with the earlier panel, I would say working with nonprofit organizations such as WIDIA and helping to provide technical assistance would be one way to make sure that adoption occurs.
Great. Just a quick thank you to the panelists, and then we'll have adjournment and closing comments by the chairman. You know, we mentioned this at the beginning of the session here, which is that the broadband issue is multifaceted. Small business is a really important one, and it was really important that we come to Chicago, a great collection of small businesses, to have this event. So, and it's really wonderful to see such a great collection of small businesses up here to talk about broadband needs. So with that, I'd like to ask Chairman Janikowski for any closing remarks.
Eric, nothing elaborate, I promise. But, you know, Eric and Tom, thanks to both of you and the FCC staff, again, for working so hard to pull this off in the days before everyone leaves town and in the middle of a big snowstorm in Washington that actually shut down the federal government today. I really appreciate everyone in each of the panels taking the time to be here and participate. We always find that whatever time we set aside isn't enough. Today is another example. We could roll up our sleeves with each of you and really dig into a number of the different issues that were raised. And I think I'd like to make sure that each of our panelists and everyone in the audience here or participating online understands that this is an ongoing process for us at the FCC, and this kind of participation is something that doesn't stop even as we adjourn this hearing. And so Eric mentioned broadband.gov. We really do encourage you to go spend some time there, and don't be shy about expressing your views or giving us your ideas, including those that occur to you in the middle of the night after thinking about today's comments. Also encourage you to take a look at reboot.fcc.gov, which is our new website designed to get general input on how the FCC can best serve its various customers and the public through our online efforts. I think I would conclude by saying that I think for all of us at the FCC, these panels have reiterated and confirmed for us the essential role that small businesses play in our economy, in our culture, in solving vital national problems like healthcare and education. And I think we take this as a spur to taking very seriously the National Broadband Plan that we're drafting, the issue of what we can do to make sure that the millions of small businesses in the U.S. that are just something of which the company can be so proud, our greatest source of innovation and service to the community, to be part of our 21st century information grid as it evolves. So we take that as a challenge to us, but we need your continued input and ideas as we try to develop our ideas. 59 days left, last 56, before our broadband plan is due, and then a lot of work after that for a long time ahead to achieve the goals that I think we all share. So a round of applause, please, for the FCC staff and our panelists, and thank you all for participating today. We are adjourned.
I swear you, Mike.